they're right about the coyotes. Uh, Are these items going to be discussed or pushed on to the next, pushed on, that's a bad word, to the next council?
Which items?
The purchase of the gym equipment, the joining of the small cities group, and also the further study of the water rates.
Yes, yes, and yes,
Okay,
because I don't think we have them on here. I didn't know about the equipment.
Gym equipment, I'm not sure.
So
What do you mean by gym equipment?
I don't think any of us are aware of the gym
well, the
equipment issue.
equipment that you bought for the fire hall,
Oh, no, it's in place already.
oh, it's already been purchased?
Yeah, it was purchased a couple months ago. It's in place down there.
Okay, I'm speechless.
Next. Hold on one second, ma'am.
Yeah. Can I say it's a good time to go ahead and mention the live stream?
Okay.
The thing we talked about earlier?
Absolutely.
It is streaming. We didn't push the publish button. It will probably go back because it's been recording the entire time. It'll probably have the whole meeting. For anybody who's watching now, that Elizabeth's phone was lighting up, it's important that people subscribe to that channel. Once we hit, people are using it, but they aren't subscribing, and once 100 people subscribe, YouTube changes your status and will allow us to have a URL that is whatever we want that's available, so we can have something like YouTube/Signal Council.
Can you let everybody know the channel?
Yeah, well, there isn't
Or how
a
do you-
chance, that's the problem. Is
Okay.
what you have to do is go to YouTube right now and type in Signal Watch Live Stream and press return, and then you'll find it. But then when you're there, you have to click on the name, the user, Signal Watch, and subscribe to that user, and then you'll get notices.
Oh, that's when you click on the little bell or whatever down.
Yeah,
Right, okay.
exactly.
right.
But you need to subscribe to that person's channel. We're up to 41 now.
Oh, we'll definitely do
We're
that.
getting close.
So, yeah. Please pass the word on that, because that'd help out. They also store that all for us, right?
Forever,
Okay.
as far as we
Great.
know.
That saved us a lot of money. Ma'am, you were going to go?
Yes, my name is Sherry Brown, and I live at 2833 Anderson Pike. And I just wanted to come and address the goat ordinance as well. While I have young children myself, very concerned. I've seen a coyote near where we live, or what I thought was. I don't know that I am in total agreement that goats or livestock are going to bring tons of new coyotes to the area, because they're here. And I feel like that we have so many dogs and people are buying dogs all the time. Those are much easier. Dogs and cats are much easier to, I don't feel like there's going to be a massive goat population increase on Signal Mountain because we passed an ordinance. I feel like it's such a few amount of people that, that I'm not against it, and I just wanted to speak for it. At the same time saying I'm obviously concerned about the safety of our children and other pets.
Thank you very much for your letter, too.
Okay, I was going to read that, if
Yeah,
that's okay.
sure.
My husband wrote this letter because he's much better at speaking briefly about these things. So our family purchased a 6-acre tract of land about 10 years ago when it was unincorporated in Hamilton County. The property was zoned agricultural, and it had been used to varying degrees since that time, cattle, lots of animals on the land. At the time that we bought it, it had been separated from a few other parcels but remained pastoral land, including extensive fencing that remains today, a barn that used to store hay and provide shelter for animals, and also some horses were living on the property at the time. A number of neighbors who have garden patches behind Bachman, where our property connects, used to walk over and get all the manure and everything from our property, so having that was very beneficial to them to use as fertilizer for their vegetables. So we eventually arranged with the owner of the horses to have them moved elsewhere so we could build our home, which we did in 2010. And I know that more than one neighbor was sad to see the horses go. We heard from lots of people about tearing the barn down. And it's just part of the mountain is having livestock next to neighborhoods. And I feel like that's part of what makes our community special. So several years later, we were annexed by the town. We did not realize at the time we were being changed from agricultural to, or that would lose its agricultural status. We didn't get any notifications from the town to that effect. Had we known, we would have probably said something at that time, because our desire was to have some horses at some point, or if, just for resale value, we have 6 acres and it's a great area for horses to be back on the property like it was when we bought it. So we understand there are property owners in the town that would like the freedom to use their property, subject to certain standards, to keep goats. We support this endeavor. Part of the charm of Signal Mountain community is that it includes modern conveniences and neighborhood communities, but also the feel of an older and simpler time when people had the freedom to slow down and enjoy God's creation, including family farms, orchards, gardens, animals, and other natural features. We believe that a sensible policy to allow the goats, depending whether it's a neighborhood or a 2-acre plot or a 4-acre plot or a 6-acre plot, makes a lot of sense so that there isn't an overpopulation of goats. But at this point in time, we just didn't feel like that is something that we're not going to be overpopulated with goats, just because we pass an ordinance that a lot of people don't even know is being passed. So those who want them, we feel like should be able to have them. So I just wanted to state that.
Thank
for
you
the
very
record.
much.
Thanks.
Now, just to clarify, Ms. Brown's property was part of what was annexed during the Fox One retreat? Okay. Who else would like to address the council? Yes, ma'am. How you doing, Sue?
My name's Sue Teeter. I live at 2200 Fox Run Drive. And I would respectfully request that you not pass this amendment to the goat ordinance. We found out about this, I don't know, a month ago. I came and spoke to the committee that was working, the town council
Planning
before.
Commission.
And we did ask, and you wanted to pass this, and we did ask how many lots this affects and how many people actually requested this. The way I found out about it was that this ordinance came up and someone called and let us know that it had passed a first reading. This, to my understanding, Mr. Veal wanted goats on his property. His property is directly behind my property. I live in a residential subdivision. I didn't ever want to live on a farm, and when I bought my property, I didn't realize that this would ever become an issue. But I'd also feel like it degrades the value of my property. I don't want to hear goats. I don't want to smell goats. I certainly don't want to increase the population of coyotes in my neighborhood. To me, it's irresponsible to put a goat anywhere where coyotes are already running wild. We've seen coyotes on our property. We have animals. We have cats and we have a dog. So has anybody found out how many people have requested this other than Mr. Veal and his neighbor?
Do you want me to speak to that? One, I didn't request this, per se. Someone else came to Planning Commission and made a request. I don't remember her name. Who is?
Please, no back and forth.
Be able to find it.
Over the course of several years, we've had several people ask about it. Most of them requesting to have them on much smaller parcels than what is proposed here. I do not remember names. I can give you an exact number. I'm not going to make something up. I know over a period of time, we've had several people ask about it. This person, we put in touch with our planner. She met with them, talked to them, and put together the information for Planning Commission to look at, and then that person didn't come to the meeting. It was passed. In the meantime, I think even at this period, Dan, you may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, Jennifer left the planning.
I'm trying to
development
find,
district, yeah.
right back in her notes, if it has a name.
So with the information being put together and ready for discussion, I did ask them to go ahead and have the discussion and explain that it's something that I might want to do, but I wasn't the one that initiated it. Kind of really went out of my way not to do that. This other person brought it up. It was on the agenda, so they moved forward with the discussion.
So the other person brought it to the planning commission originally.
Correct.
Is that how you remember it, Dan?
Yes.
I'm sorry,
What,
Ms. Teeter.
uh,
Go ahead.
Right, and we're discussing this later. I don't know how much discussion you want to have now, but there's,
I was going to have her finish her comments, and then if we want
I
to
guess
discuss that
from our
later.
point of view, the first we heard of it was when it came up. We haven't been able to find out who brought it up, how many people have brought it up, and how many parcels it affects. It does affect me, and I really do not want goats in my backyard. So I, again, respectfully ask that it be denied.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
You-
Brent Teeter.
Right, we're only supposed to allow
Okay.
once, but go ahead.
You crafted the legislation and your name's on it though, correct?
My name is on it?
You did.
Not-
no,
not that I
our
know
planner
of.
did that.
Yeah.
The,
Our planner did that, and she pulled from other towns of a similar size.
Who was
when,
our advisor to the planning commission, correct?
Who
Yeah.
drafted
Was that Jennifer at the
When-
time? Who was it?
Jennifer Williams.
Yeah.
she brought the initial information, documents, draft, sample information. After the planning commission members gave direction on what they would support,
Right.
then I drafted the ordinance, brought it back to the planning commission, and they reviewed it, and I even suggested some ways that we may make it even more restrictive, and they said that this draft is what they wanted, so,
But your signature is on the bottom of it.
no, I don't sign
Okay, but you.
ordinances,
You
no.
drafted it, okay.
I draft every
He
ordinance,
drafts everything that comes.
every
through. That's his
resolution that
job.
comes to this body.
Okay.
I write the ones you heard today about the soccer team and the veterans, I wrote those too. That's part of my job.
Okay. And-
Yeah.
and Also, for the record, you had a conversation with my neighbor 6 or 8 months ago about your intent to put goats on your property, is that correct?
Are we
Wait a
Yeah,
minute, yeah,
this is
hearing
not
here?
appropriate.
Question.
I'll be happy to answer the question.
Okay.
I
Well, then-
told him that I was considering asking to be rezoned at the time,
Okay,
and why. And at the time, the part of my property that is behind his property is just thick woods. And my thought was to have goats in there
So
to
the
clear that
zoning
up.
wasn't allowed?
May I finish? So I explained to him that this is what I was thinking about doing, and he said that he would be opposed to that.
Okay,
And I took that to heart.
I understand, so.
When we
this is
started
not-
this process, it was determined that it wasn't a zoning issue, it was a code issue. And since I had that discussion with him, someone offered to clear that back for me. I didn't need that, so I wasn't gonna be putting goats back there. Wasn't gonna be putting goats on your side of my property at all, if I did it. So the whole scenario changed.
And I don't, this is not for a back and forth.
Yeah,
and
there's a
we're
point
not
of order
paying-
here that
yeah,
we need to
so,
call.
But I asked
Phil.
a
If
you'd
question
wrap-
and it
I
wasn't
understand,
answered, so-
and we
so
let-
You were responsible for drafting
Phil.
this ordinance.
There's a point of order.
which he
Go back and forth.
already said, that's his job to draft every ordinance.
All right.
Thank you.
And I want to toss in, and this will come up later, but goats have come up many times over the past couple of years when kudzu comes up, because it's something people do.
Coyotes came up, so now you're wanting to tie up bait in cages.
All right,
We can't.
but
Yeah.
no more back and forth. Anybody else like to address the council on this issue or any others?
Can't do-
I did want to say that, in addition.
You got to give your name and address.
My name is Tim Campbell, 2204 Foxconn Drive. I did have some prior conversations with Mr. Veal on this, and, we talked about it then when there was a proposal here for an ordinance allowing the keeping of goats. He and I met and kind of discussed this as neighbors, and because of his position managing the codes, I mean, he gave me his personal assurances that if this becomes a problem and I ask him to take them out, he'd take them out, okay? So, I mean, that gave me basically a right of refusal and honestly kind of extended to me basically a privilege that the rest of the folks that have small lots that back up to large parcels won't get. But the bigger issue, and when I crafted this letter to you, it dealt with specifically the policy of having these large animals and these bait animals, if you want to refer to them as such, on properties throughout the city or throughout the town that adjoin community centers, churches, playgrounds, nursing homes. They have large parcels that back up to the country club. large
Mr.
parcels
Campbell,
back up to the elementary schools.
if you could wrap it up, we gave you over
Yes,
3
sir.
minutes.
And I appreciate that. In closing, I just would like to say that I think that we originally had listed in our town plan a comment there as it related to goats. It said, kudzu, no goats. That was our policy. It wasn't there to protect the kudzu. It was because people were concerned about the issues of keeping goats. So I ask that you vote this down.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else like to address the council?
I get one more short.
Oh, wow. Hurry up.
Your last one.
Yeah, let's go.
Doesn't roll down Cemetery Lane. It doesn't roll down Cemetery Lane. Now, tonight, nothing will be determined concerning the sale or not sale of the water company. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's nothing going to be,
So that'll be the next council business too.
Yes.
right. There might be something on water line replacement and tempering connection along Shoal Creek's Falls.
No, that wasn't it. Okay, thank you.
I was going to speak on that, but just one sentence. When I spoke on Kirkland.
Please state your name, why not?
Mary Hudson, 1150 James Boulevard. The only thing I wanted to say is just listening to both sides of this issue, because I came to the work session where the public hearing was held. I guess that was the public hearing, where you'd already had the first.
For the record, you're on about the fifth sentence, just
Oh,
saying.
I'm sorry. I forgot. All right, so all I want to say is, could this ordinance not include a provision so that there has to be mutual agreement between the adjoining property owners? Because they're property owners, like we just heard one, that, she would not have any problem with that.
I think
So-
that's, I appreciate that thought.
Okay, that's my
But I
thought.
think that's such a gray area, and somebody giving permission and not, you've gone to the expense and everything, I think that'd be open a can of worms. Mr. Spuda, please.
Rick Saputa, 216 Primrose Way. I didn't hear anybody mention thanks to the soccer referees that make it possible for the girls to go out and win state championships, so I'm fine with that. A little follow-on, since there's not going to be any action on the sale of water, is there going to be any action on a rate increase in water today?
I don't think so. I know it's on there, but I don't think there's going to be any action today.
And if there was, or if there ends up being, I would say I would like to see your background and basis for that in the way of some financial and project planning and budgeting, all those things that the MTAS study said you lack. It was interesting running for town council, inspired me to do a lot of reading of the town ordinances and Tennessee code. Unfortunately, I think for the town, I found out a lot of things in the code that I don't think people here keep up with. That'll affect the sale of water or any action there. I've mentioned some of those things in the past. And along the lines of running a campaign and being out at the poll, on election day, I can say that I experienced some selective enforcement of town codes that didn't really apply to a particular situation. And one thing that bothered me in particular was when I was told the statement that if the town ordinances did not specifically say you could do something, then you cannot do it. I mentioned that to my son, and he pointed out the fact that town ordinances do not permit breathing, and I was wondering if the council is going to abide by that and follow that. But there's some issues there, and there could be some consequences down the road that might come out of that.
I think if you had some specifics, that the next council would be happy to at least answer the question, but without specifics, it's going to be tough.
Well, it dealt with signs and banners and things like that.
Okay.
Again, in situations that are not applied by what is in the law or what the intent is. But plus the fact that it was some selective enforcement action.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Thank you for running. Takes a lot of courage.
On the spending ordinances, or you're gonna vote on today, it's a couple $100,000 for some pretty good ditch digging, I think. On the water line replacement, I take it that the cost of that is coming out of the general town funds, not out of the water.
Comes out of the water fund, would be my guess.
Is action that is not required, is required by action of the town, not an action of the water company. If you're building a bridge requiring to replace a line, that cost should be the burden of the town in general.
Boyd? What's your?
No, that's, if utilities are in right-of-way and the right-of-way work is necessary, whether it's a bridge or just road widening or whatever, the owner of the utility is responsible for relocating the utility, in this case, the water. So the gas company's dealing with it, doing the same thing. They're required to move the gas line. The water department is required as well.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Saputo?
Not at this meeting. We'll save the rest if you're not taking any action on water rates or water sale.
Okay. Yeah, I highly doubt we are unless somebody makes something that's not on there.
Boyd, I just want to make sure I understood that correctly. So if the gas company was moving some of their pipes or laying some pipe and the water line had to be moved, the gas company would have to pay for that?
That I'm not sure about. If, in this case, municipality is working in the right-of-way, we're rebuilding the bridge, the water line is basically attached to the bridge, then they have to relocate those water lines at their expense. In the same project, I believe there's some poles for EPB and Bell South. They have to move those poles at their expense. They have the privilege of using the right-of-way for utility delivery. Along with that comes the obligation that if those have to be moved because of the civil project, they bear the cost of that.
Anything else? Okay. Anybody else like to address the council? Sorry, Claire, I didn't see you. Pardon? Go ahead.
God, we're never
Hey,
gonna
good.
get done.
Ann Haygood, 506 James Boulevard. The ad hoc water group is continuing to compile data about retaining ownership of the town water system, including information about a possible operations and maintenance agreement. We hope you will request a professional rate study from MTAS, as that will provide significant additional data for decision-making. We do thank you for working with us, and we look forward to working with the new council as well.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Greisinger?
Claire Greisinger, 40 Carriage Hill. Every year, the mayor gives a State of the Town address to the residents, and tonight, Mayor Howley will give a report for this past year and the year before that, and I would like to thank him for these two reports. A resident recently asked me what is in a State of the Town. For residents that are not familiar with this document, it is full of information. Each annual message gives basic financial information like beginning and ending of fund balance. It includes town council actions in progress and some that are pending. It focuses on significant accomplishments and goals. The message talks briefly about the volunteer boards, what some of them have been done during the past fiscal year. The State of the Town contains information on town departments. The police and fire department reports include training information, grants, number of incidents handled, and so on. The financial department section is various budget, loan information. The building codes list permits issued, inspections, and so on. Public Works is full of information on the transfer station, garbage, brush pickup, recycling, paving, grants, training, and number of hours our dedicated town employees put in to get the job done. The Water Department provides information about infrastructure, training, and so on. Library and MAC reports cover, among other things, their programs and the use of those facilities, as well as some of the revenue information. And in the Rec Department report, one can find how many youth enjoyed our town facilities, as well as trail and maintenance information. Residents can go to the town website and read the State of the Town messages starting in 2009 and get an idea of what our town employees accomplish each year. So I want to again thank Mayor Howley for adding these reports later in this meeting that cover these 2 years as mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address the council? Bill? You sure?
I need to say one more thing. Fred Teeter, 2200 Fox Run Drive. I just want to, for the record, you're the gentleman that issues the goat permits, correct?
The town issues the goat. Look,
Actually,
The
Boyd,
ordinance right here says
Boyd.
you must obtain a permit from the
Eric.
town manager, is that correct?
Boyd, and let's, no more back and forth. You've had two chances
I'm
to
asking
talk.
a question. Does the town manager
Right.
issue the goat
And
permits?
you've gone through your time, all
I would
right?
suggest you set up a meeting. I'm sure
Yeah.
Boyd would be
Yes.
happy to meet with you.
Set up a meeting. Anybody else like to address the council that hasn't already addressed the council?
Okay, can we move on?
All right, that's closed. Next on the agenda are resolutions, authorizing additional funds, LPRF grant, Marion and Driver Field. This is resolution number 2018-76, resolution of Signal Mountain Town Council authorizing additional funds for the local parks and recreation fund grant project at Marion and Driver Field. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. Discussion on the issue. Or actually, Boyd, could you just give us a?
Sure. As you know, we've applied for and received a grant to rebuild Marion and Driver Field.
Yes, I can. I'm right, because he's a song.
Guys, hey,
He needs
please.
to leave.
Go ahead, Boyd.
The grant totaled $800,000 with a $400,000 match by the town for the total of $800,000. When we went to the first grant workshop, we met with them and they had an issue with it and told us that we would have to put all the overhead electrical service underground. The guide for the grant says that all new electrical service will be placed underground. Under no circumstances will electrical service be located above a facility. They explained that the first sentence was for new facilities, but the second sentence was for all facilities. We discussed the fact that was a bit confusing. They agreed completely, but said we still have to do it. Luckily, they have agreed to let us amend the grant so that we will get a 50% match on this as well. So it's going to increase the grant amount.
They have confirmed that.
Yes.
I know that was up in the air during our last meeting.
Right. We've sent it all in for, but that was their commitment. at
So
that
we'll end up
meeting.
getting 440,000.
440, and our match is 440 as well. So it's simply a matter of the folks that created the grant did not interpret that section as requiring it, but the state says that it is required. So if we're going to move forward with the project, we'll need to add that in.
Are we comfortable that that 80,000 is going to cover
We
what's needed?
had a contractor actually give us a preliminary quote, so we would have something to work from. It wasn't just an estimate.
Okay. Any other issues, questions, discussions?
Just to talk about it, we've had preliminary quotes before that didn't pan out. And generally, it's because the economy changes or because of time and all that, and so that's still a possibility with this. If we did have cost overruns in this, does the grant go up?
No.
Okay. If we found a way, as all this was being done, if we had to trim something, does that mess up
Generally,
the grant we're going for?
Generally, the scope of the project is what's required to be
Okay.
completed.
Just anticipating that we're,
It's just like the original cost estimates for the project itself were done by an engineer, just like with James Boulevard.
Right.
It's not staff just taking a stab at it.
Right.
We've tried to get the best figures we can on these things, and so sometimes when a project takes 2 to 3 years to come to fruition, you're going to have those issues, but we have a solid number as we think we can get right now.
And we're not going to wait to bid that project, right? That's going to go pretty much right away.
I think this one will move fairly quickly.
Any further discussion on this? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. 5-0. Sam and Jared, all of you that worked on this, that's great stuff. I mean, that's a lot of money in that grant. And Bill, for 4 years, you are an absolute trooper. Congratulations, and I think it's the right thing to do. But thank you for your commitment. Next on the agenda is Resolution 2018-77, a resolution authorizing the town manager to enter into an agreement with Adams Contracting, LLC, for a water line replacement and temporary connection along Shoal Creek Falls for amount not to exceed $109,550 and no cents. You want to give us, before we motion that, will you just give us a background on that?
Sure. This is what I was referring to earlier with rebuilding Shoal Creek Falls Bridge. The water line will have to be replaced. During that project, we'll also have to place a temporary water supply line along the temporary road that's going to come out of the back of the subdivision. And once the bridge and everything is in place, then the subdivision will be fed as it is now, but with a relocated line. So this is for the total of all of that work, the temporary line and the relocation of the existing main line.
Can I get a motion?
Second?
We have a first and second discussion on the issue. Again, this is outside the Shoal Creek repair, and it's coming from the water system.
Correct.
All right. Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 5-0. Next on the agenda, moving on to ordinances. Is it officially numbered because it's second reading? Okay. Ordinance number 2018-12, an ordinance to amend Title 10, Chapter 1, Section 10-103 of the Town of Signal Mountain Municipal Code in reference to keeping livestock in the town. Boyd, would you, I think we got a pretty good idea where we are, but would you mind just giving us a summary?
Yes, this really addresses two separate issues, the keeping of livestock in residential estate, which just changes the requirement, or creates a requirement for a permit for goats there. It also establishes the nuisance provisions within that area, which didn't exist before. The main thing is the change to the prohibition for goats in other residential areas. It will be allowed for goats on parcels of 2 acres or more. Again, it does have nuisance provisions and permitting as well. It comes from Planning Commission with a recommendation. At this point, I'll plea that whatever you do, for God's sake, don't do it for my sake.
And I'm on the planning commission, and feel like it's appropriate to speak a little bit about where this came from. I want to state first that,
Just Robert, let me ask Robert Rule, should
Yeah,
we?
isn't
should
this
we
during
motion?
discussion?
Should we first and second discussion, or should this be done beforehand?
I think we should first and second it.
I may be about to attempt to table it,
Okay. All right.
and that could come before, couldn't it? So I'm uncomfortable with the temperature in the room about this. I'm not uncomfortable with the ordinance. I wonder if there's a provision for some sort of a written statement that, or I want to step back a little bit. It was at least mildly alleged that this snuck up on people. And this is a problem we've had with many things throughout this past year, that we get to the stage where something gets to the council, and then all of a sudden, or even sometimes after the first reading, and then people are coming forward with ideas that would have really helped in the planning commission stage, because we talked about this a lot, and all of those kinds of meetings are announced. So there was nothing that was hidden from anyone, and it would have been way better to hear your concerns on the front end. Now, you can't expect to know everything up front, so, I'm not saying, bad you, but we have to do a better job of making sure everyone's involved in that. So that's our bad, I guess, would be the way to look at it, that you didn't know. So I'm open to suggestions for that.
Bless you.
Speaking to this ordinance, though, people and animals have coexisted for years, and coyotes have existed for years, and this comes down to a property rights issue, and it's one of the things that makes it so heated, because people who were annexed feel like their property rights have been violated to some extent, and in all cases, probably you, because you were annexed, and if it had been, the annexation could have been different, you could have been an estate, depending, there's just the...
I actually requested that.
Okay, so I didn't know that. So these things are complicated. The concept of, I've looked at this, and Mr. Campbell, I read all the information that you gave us. We talked about this for an hour, so this isn't like a flippant decision. This is why councils and commissions exist, to have to deal with things like this. And if it's too charged, does tabling it do any good to have a chance for, because what happened tonight isn't the way this should happen. Is there a way that we can sit down and talk about this some more to maybe hear some suggestions? People have their property and they get annexed and they get their rights taken away from them. I think the most legitimate reason to not want goats next to you is because you don't want goats next to you. If you don't want goats, you don't want goats. And that's why our nuisance ordinances exist. If a dog gets out of someone's yard, the dog's not going to get on a car. If a goat gets out of the yard, the goat may be standing on a BMW. Well, you can get your BMW fixed because of that, but the goat's probably not going to do it. But the dog's more likely to attract a coyote. So I don't see where I'm getting at. I don't know that the Planning Commission, we didn't have any of these objections. So,
May I make one point?
Mm-hmm.
In really attempting to get this in the open and discussed and not be driven by me, when we looked at it and determined that it wasn't a change to zoning,
right.
that actually takes it out of the Planning Commission's realm. But we still took it and stayed in the Planning Commission through the process and got their guidance and what they would think was reasonable during the process. This is not something the Planning Commission would have to approve or recommend. So that in and of itself was an attempt to have more initial discussion and all.
But Dan needs to make a motion basically to table this so we can discuss it right? It needs to be seconded by Robert's Rule of Order. Or the motion needs to be put forward that we.
Right, we
at
don't
this point.
discuss it if we table it.
Right, and that's what I'm trying to find
So
out.
are you
what
making a
the-
Are
motion
you
to
making a
table
motion to
it?
Well, that's what I want to know.
Now, let me finish by saying, what I just said is in no way meant to argue against tabling it. I'm fine with whatever
Sure.
discussion we want to have. Just speaking to the process, we actually went through more process than was actually necessary because we wanted to get the planning commission's input, and not only input, but guidance. Again, so they drove, as you know, they said, here's what we think it should be, and that's what I drafted.
Sure.
But I'm fine with whatever discussion you
So-
want to have.
I'll explain my reasons more, but I move that we table this until the new council is convened.
Can I make a comment before we get there, or is it automatic? Okay. Do we have a second? I'll second. Now what? Okay.
Yeah, now
I
we
thought
can
we don't
discuss
discuss it if we table it.
the why of tabling.
That's why we're tabling it, right?
Right.
So you discuss until it's voted.
And then we'll vote on the table.
Okay, you didn't
Yeah.
actually motion it, okay.
Yeah, so the
Okay.
reason to table is so that, should we approve this, and I'll tell you guys, I'm leaning towards approving it, because I think it makes sense. I think the nuisance laws satisfy your grievance here. They don't satisfy not wanting goats next door, but if the goats are a problem, then the nuisance laws exist. But I think we should table it now so that there's no chance that it looks like we tried to do this with outgoing members. I think, get ready,
There's an
Susanna.
important part of this that hasn't been discussed that I feel comfortable not having to table it. But it says, "The permit may be suspended or revoked by the town manager at any time when there is a risk for existing conditions to public health or safety, and if there's any violation or failure to comply with the provisions of this section after a permit has been properly issued." So to me, that addresses kind of that, I think they were talking about coyotes and it being live bait. And if it becomes a danger, then we do have discretion to change or revoke permits.
Right, this gets sunsetted if we don't. This
Table.
whole thing gets sunsetted if we don't renew it in a year.
Oh, in a year?
Correct, boys?
Yes.
Does it have to go back to?
And to clarify one other point, just like with chickens, this is delegated to the building official. It's my responsibility, but he's designated to handle all of this stuff. And yes, he works for me, but it's not me directly that issues the permit.
And prior to annexing, these properties in question specifically, like in Fox Run, et cetera, were in the county. And, you know, with the annexation, there's been regulations put in, so this is just a modification. So there's actually been put in more protections on some level by the annexation, right? Because prior to that annexation, it was the county, and you could have had 25 goats on a property, and now it's coming back, and there's been some adjustment back. So the planning committee has really kind of fleshed a lot of that stuff out.
Well, even post-annexation, if you had 3 acres, you could have a goat. And it wasn't a pygmy, it was full size. You had to go to the BZA. And
In residential estate zoning.
in residential estates, but you had to go to the BZA, and it's not like you were asking for a goat, you were just basically telling them you wanted a goat, is the way that thing read, and then they would say,
I believe, did you all read that letter from Ms. Brown? Before they were annexed, I believe they were annexed in the Windtree Fox Run annexation. Their property rights were that they were agricultural and they could have had whatever they wanted on there. Is there any natural grandfathering in something like that? For, you're changing where they were, and let's say
That's a
they had a
good
horse
question.
farm out there, they get annexed, they have to disband the horse farm? I mean, that sounds,
That's one of the purposes for the planning commission after annexation to consider what the zoning of the property is and to result in a compatible zone. The compatible zone the town has is residential estate. Don't forget the aspect that the town was created in 1919 because there was a problem with cows going all over there without having fences. We've had regulations
I would, not directly related to this topic, I have no problem tabling it. I think it might be the best thing to do, especially so it can be discussed further and cool down. But I would suggest, I've known Boyd a long time, and I've worked with him, to infer that he's doing this for himself, I think, is, I've known, Boyd's always above reproach and gone beyond, so I don't think that's the strongest argument or suit to go down that road. And I know that if so I just give you that advice going forward as this comes up. Any other discussion, or you want to vote? The motion is, would you read it, Carol?
Position until the new council convenes.
And we have a first and second. You ready to vote? All those in favor in tabling, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Carries 4-1. 4-1?
No, I didn't vote.
What?
Didn't
Oh, you,
vote.
hold on,
I'm not
hold on,
sure.
hold on.
I'm okay with tabling it. I'll vote.
Okay. 4-1. And you have the one no vote, right? Okay. So that this remains 2018-12, right, Carol?
It may not come back as 12.
Okay, so if one goes in between, that number's going to change. I'm going to leave that, I'll leave that in the packet for you.
That is likewise a second reading on this table, for the second reading, the first reading is still out there.
Right.
So we take one meeting action by the council, should the new council choose to do that.
Right, we're just tabling the second vote, so it's still active.
Right.
If there are any changes to it, it has to start over again.
And so the
Or
next-
substantial
So the next
changes.
council at the, let's say, the next working agenda session, they decide to put it back on, or is it just going to automatically be put back on?
I don't think it gets put back on until the council
Decides
directs.
to. So right
Yeah.
now, it's just dead.
My guess is what's going to happen, and I'm not going to speak for future councils, but my guess is at the next agenda meeting, they'll have the discussion and then decide if they're going to put it back on at that point. But
Sorry.
Go ahead.
It's not kicking it down the road so much as it, this needs to cool off a little bit. And there's no emergency if we don't approve it now.
yeah, it's nothing wrong with taking some more time and having some people listen to it.
All right, let's hear the state of the town.
Oh, is that next?
It
Already?
is.
All
You need
right.
to start it, you're gonna do the,
Will you, sure.
I'm not. I'm going to give it
No,
to
well, I'll do it. I'm just going to do it from here.
Oh, do you want me to do?
What? No, no.
Show me how to do it,
I
I'll
don't
do
know
it.
how to do it.
Okay.
Chief, if, Chief Williams?
It's cold in here.
Can we just shut the lights off over there? Do they work that way? Sue and Eric, thank you, though, for coming.
there's a
Appreciate
dimmer.
it. If you hit right down here, boy. That right there.
Okay.
Perfect.
Oh, ye of little faith.
I know. Will this advance it or what?
It should.
Okay. All right, as was pointed out to me, and it was my shortcoming, I was supposed to do this each year, and Dick did do one?
Did one his first year, yeah.
What happened second year? He did two? Okay. Well, this is going to be more of kind of a summary of 2 years, so apologize for my error there. Contents will be, I'll talk a little bit about the financial overview, transparency, grants, accomplishments, open projects and issues, and then future suggestions. And please note, and I will note too, that most of these are my suggestions and may not represent the council. Financial overview, you got the last couple years on there. As you see, our budget, we're expecting $7.5 million in general fund revenue. We're also expecting $9.3 million in general fund expenditures. That's because we have a couple large capital projects in that year. And those will most of that's coming out of the general fund. What I've done on the last column is, this is just from my experience 4 years going through the financials, and I have, this is purely my opinion, and I understand that staff and other council members may not agree with it, but what I did is I took about the half the amount. If you see, we averaged understating revenues by about 7.8%, and overstating expenses about 7.4%, which is a net of a swing of 15.9%. I applied a 3% gain in revenue and a 3% reduction in, which is less than half of both those categories that we've experienced over the last 5 years. And again, purely a projection. Our state recommendation is that we have 25% in reserves. That 25% number based on what our current budget is $2.3 million. So we're well above that, and and on my projections, we're also well above that. The town has established a minimum of 35% as reserves, which under the current town budget would be $3.26 million, and under my revised is 3.2. Either way, we're looking at if the budget falls, the actuals right where our budget is, which is very rare, we'd be at 37%, and under my projections, I think it's going to get as high as about 50%. Again, that's where I got my numbers for the taking half of what the previous 5 years average was, so that we were either over and under in our budget. And it's budgeting. That's what you're supposed to do. All right. You be very conservative on your revenue, and hopefully you come over. And we've done a good job of that. And you're conservative on your expenses. You put more in there in case it's needed, and they've done a good job of managing those expenses, so they're coming in lower than expected for the last 5 years. Here's the tax summary for the last 4 years. You can see the base was 1.42. We had 15 cents, which was a flexible number. We could go up to 30 cents per $100 of assessed value, but it was at 15 for 2 years. We paid that note off early. And then 2017-18, you'll notice the numbers don't jive exactly because we had a reassessment, and under a reassessment of properties, which occurs every 3 or 4 years. Three or four. Somebody help me. Carol? 4, right? Yeah. I think it's every, no? 3? All right. 3 to 4 years. But when that happens, we have to adjust our rate down to meet what the revenue would be in for the new assessed values. So that was done. And then with the school bond piece coming off, the 15 cents coming off, which sunsetted as was required by that ordinance and vote, that was a public vote that input that tax sunsetted. Now, a lot of that 32% increase, as my memory recalled, and I'm not sure that everybody would agree with it on here, but a large portion was to cover the hall tax. Property rates reassessment require. Now, the one things we haven't done, and I think this is where there might have been some confusion, is we really haven't increased taxes for the year-over-year increases. And part of that was the council had discussed 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago in getting the reserves down because we were at 100% at one point, and I think the feeling was when you have 100% of the reserves, you're holding on to people's money, taxpayers' money, that they could have themselves, plus you're a taxing authority, so you can, if you get into a situation where you're going to go below that, you're able to increase taxes. Transparency, council transparency. I want a special thanks to Councilman Landrum and Dr. Spaulding. Dr. Spaulding for the last 4 years, and Councilman Landrum for the last 2 have done a great job in helping us increase our transparency by videotaping and what's it called? Live streaming? Live streaming these meetings. Being able to, with technology as it's advancing, we were concerned 4 years ago when we started looking at this, the cost and the storage, because there's specific laws on storage of these things. But with advancing technologies, we're able to do that, and Councilman Landrum especially was a large help in getting that done. We've had the most public meetings held since 2007, and that includes the ISD and water system meetings where we engage the public. Instituted 4 years ago, we instituted monthly financial reports when we came on. So every month now, it wasn't having before, every month now we get a summary from Carol that shows us where we are versus budget, what we're expending, so we can track our progress throughout the year. And then records requests, we had a significant number, and I'll talk about some accomplishments regarding that in a second. Here are grants over the last 2 years. All right, we've received a total of $3.95 million in grants. And that takes a lot of effort from the departments and the staff here. I couldn't be more proud of it. I couldn't go back and find anywhere where we had larger grant years. But the last 2 years, the town staff, aided by the council, has brought in a ton of money to help improve all aspects of life up here. Plus, we're applied for and believe we're getting the 950. What's that for? Help me out, Sam. Okay, and we've got that. We're signing the contracts, right? So since I've done it, that's come through. So really almost $5 million in 2 years in grant money to the town.
I believe that 950 may be the bike salary.
Okay, so that's not. So we don't have it yet. Okay. Good. That's why I had it on applied for. So $4 million over 2 years that we brought in to help the town. Accomplishments. I got 2 pages. I'm going to hit the highlight ones. Completed the fire station number 2. That was a project we've done in 2 years. Construction was under a year, and everybody came together to get that done. And if you haven't been out there, it is an amazing facility, and it'll go to provide much better reaction and response time by our police and fire and medical, especially out to the new annexed areas, but also to the 2 schools out there, which was very, very important to me. TDOT meeting back in October 2017, a little over a year ago. We finally got TDOT to come back. They brought in, what, 9, 10 people, Bo? I mean, we had a big meeting in the middle of the day where they came back and laid out the improvement plans for coming up the mountain, which we've been, I think I probably sent 8 different letters to different folks at state. We had a lot of help from Patsy Hazelwood and working with Bo Watson and some others. But we got them back, got back on their list. We are in the tentative list for funding, and they went over the 3 different versions of potentially fixing the road up the mountain. And that is not what's happening now. Although they hadn't been up here and hadn't, they do talk to us regularly, and they check the road. And what happened is there was significant change when they tested every other month, and that's why they felt they needed to come in and make those emergency repairs for what's going on now. So that's not necessarily tied to this. We're still going to have an improvement, the improvement of that road coming up the mountain. They're in the environmental stage right now of that, and that takes a little while. Sparkle Day started by Dr. Spaulding, annual event. Thank you. ISO rating from 5 to 3. That's tied into the, well, it's not tied in directly, but we've moved that rating, which really helps us in our insurance payments. And we believe we're going to have the chance to go from 3 to 2. It's not solely dependent on the new fire station, but that'll help us and that'll help reduce insurance costs even further. We added a executive level position or manager position to the town for special projects and compliance. Sam Ewan, I think he's done an excellent job. Boyd hired him in, and he's helped handle some of our RFPs, some of our contracts, and compliance with record requests and other issues like that. So thank you for your work on that. And I think that was an excellent add, because as you've seen, Sam worked heavily on grants. He's not the only one, but he's paid for himself and some with those grants we've received. James Boulevard project's approved and will start the Monday after Thanksgiving. Came in much higher than expected, and we have to make up all that, and then a lot of that's the state's fault because they dragged their feet so long. Police and fire, need to tip my hat to both chiefs that are here. Is Chief Williams still here? Thank you. Done an exceptional job. I was able to meet with you early on in my term, and that was one of my focuses, and our community engagement with the fire and police is just more than I could ever help for, and that's a testament to you all and what you've done and your leadership that filters down through those, your departments and your men. Thank you. Approved fire technology, approved police and fire technology. Basically, any requests we've had, we've tried to meet. We've got now computers in every car, correct, Chief? All right. This council, very proud of the way we've supported the fire and technology, fire and police technology. Anything else in there that's... and then the last thing, and you saw it today if you were here earlier, but we've had the opportunity, and I think it's important, to recognize our citizens and our students and our schools when they make great achievements. And I just think it spreads a good feeling to everyone in the town. Open projects and issues for the council coming up, which I always hate to turn stuff over, but within government, you can't get everything done. But the direction of the town water system and what's going to happen there, we put the RFP for the new attorney out, and we've received responses. I'm not going to go into much more of that until, but it's for the next council to handle. The James Boulevard project will be starting, so the next council will have to deal with anything that comes up from there. Obviously, the Marion and Driver improvements on the things we talked about today. The MAC improvements are still going, replacement Shoal Creek Bridge. We've been working for 2 years with some folks about creating some additional parking on Ohio Avenue because the trailhead there has become very popular, which is a good thing and a good problem to have, and try to clear up those streets, especially on the weekends when people use the trail. And then we've obviously applied for the grant, where are we on the Old Town? We've applied for it, have not received yet?
Yes, we're in the phase of that, and we're just waiting on state historical preservation to approve Peters Land Historic District down there.
All right.
So we're ready to move forward with the design as soon as we get that.
All right. Future council suggestions, and this, again, is just for me, not from the whole council, but continue to recognize the accomplishments of our citizens, schools, and students. Study the water system, but I really think everybody needs to look at, and whatever the other council decides, fine, but the effect it's going to have not on the water system budget, but the effect it's also going to have on the town budget, because there is an effect there. So to understand that before you go through as you go through your decision-making process. I would urge you strongly to continue the monthly financial statements so everybody can be attuned and the public can be attuned to where we stand financially. I encourage you to continue strong support for all of our departments, but especially the fire and police, which are our two biggest budget items. I can't say enough about the town staff. It has been an absolute pleasure to work with them, and I think this council has worked very well with our staff, and they are just professional, haven't worked in the business world for 30 years. I really appreciate the professionalism of our town staff. Continue the transparency, improvements and efforts, and community involvement, and don't be afraid to investigate and address the tough issues, even if they're unpopular, because I think education makes us all smarter. I cannot express how proud I am of this council and town staff. We together accomplished many great things that will serve this town. We all love this town. We all love for many years to come. It has been an honor and a privilege to work for our town and the citizens alongside this council and town staff. Thank you for the opportunity to serve. That's my report, and we'll have copies of it on the website. Boyd? Okay. And I've given Gail, you have a copy as well. We sent one free
That was
press.
excellent. The only thing you left out is the speed humps.
Oh, that was, no, and that was like the first year. That was
Speed
4 years
humps.
ago. Thank you for sitting through that. I know that's not scintillating for everyone, but appreciate it. Next on the agenda, discussion items, community development liaison, and I believe this was Councilman Brandon, you brought this up, didn't you?
Yes,
Okay,
I
and
did.
you had been doing some work in the background? Could you?
I've been working with Sam. Sam and I have met twice. I think really the best thing at this point, because, you know, this is the end of this council, Sam and I have discussed it with Boyd, and I'm going to put forward a motion that Boyd look into adding into the 2019 budget, creating an internship for a community development position. Then that'll allow him the lateral maneuvering, working with Sam, to be able to kind of let this become something over the next council, and then they can handle it from there.
Great.
I think that's a good idea. I think the other thing we may want to, or the next council may allow Boyd to do is, you know, maybe there's somebody on staff that could take on portions of that duty instead of having, not that an intern's a bad idea, but also give him the latitude to look within his staff if that's the council's direction.
Absolutely.
And I think it's very important for business up here.
So that was more of a suggestion than a motion.
Yeah. Or what,
Well, you know, by putting that motion forward, if it was seconded, then we could vote on it, then that would give.
did you actually make the did you make the motion?
I was
I'm
making
sorry.
that.
Please.
I'm making the motion that Boyd, town manager, look into adding to the 2019 budget, creating an internship for a community development position.
I'll second.
Actually, it's the 1920 budget would be the next budget cycle.
1920?
Is that what you want, or do you want us to amend the one we're in? What was your intention?
The next
The
one,
next one?
whichever is,
Okay.
yes, most convenient.
That's obviously, there is a rule about encumbering future councils. Is that, we're in discussion,
Well-
all right? We have first and second?
Yes.
I second.
Amy.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great idea, and I think it should move forward, but it may not, it won't be us making the decision, so how do we?
Well, I don't think he's making a motion that we encumber the next council. He's making a motion for Boyd to
gather the
to gather the information.
Right.
Okay,
And
good.
Have you, any idea, I mean, on internship costs, internship, I mean, sometimes
No,
interns
and in
make
fact,
nothing.
Sam was, you know, very, I mean, I can't, you know, for the short period I was involved in the council, I am very impressed with the staff, with the town, and the willingness that they are to do these things. And I think Sam is really, you know, being a really good point person on this. And that was one of the things we talked about was, in such a short period of time, there's not a lot that we can bring. And so this was a way that I could just put this motion together as a final thing that they can then take to the future. And then, you know, that would be a question that you could ask into the next council. What are the costs? What does this really look like? Can it be someone who's already on staff taking part of this? What is community development? You know, taking the temperature of the residents. Could be involved in communications about council meetings. There's, you know, I wanted it to be a lot of lateral maneuvering for the staff to be able to craft this thing moving forward. So
It's
you know,
basically asking him to come up with the information.
Right, to
so
come
the
back
next,
with.
Yeah, so the next council has good information to make a decision. and move
Correct.
forward.
What would you need to do that effectively?
Really just, I mean, we have an understanding of what the vision is
that red?
With MTS and see, I mean, they regularly have intern opportunities, and there is some cost associated with it, far lower than hiring staff to fill a position, but a lot of times, we've had them here. And coming in on something like this, where it's a focused project, where they're here for 2 or 3 months, to really put the meat on the bone of this thing and see if it's something that makes sense, and put an identity to it, and then from there you identify what it takes to actually.
And just a future to add to this, so the folks know, a lot of the reason you brought this up is because we had the MBA, Mountain Business Association, was up here.
Basically dissolved.
That basically dissolved, so now there's no real voice for those businesses up here.
But you know, in the discussion, realizing that it really surpasses that. It really comes down to, and Sam and I kind of in discussion, you know, we sort of hit on this idea of, you know, vision of the residents themselves. How do we envision ourselves? You know, the integration of the business is like one component of this, and as you had brought up the idea of the home-based business, there's lots of things, you know, the church as an organization and how they integrate, and how do we see ourselves, and, you know, what do we want our town to look like? We're going into the centennial. In 100 years, what do we want to look like? What do we want to be? And how do we, and control growth is maybe a little too restrictive, but the idea of what does growth look? We know people are going to be coming into the town, and, you know, what do we see ourselves being in the future? Business being an important component, but so many more parts to that.
Right. Excellent.
The discussion really did evolve that way. I mean, when we first started talking about it, you were talking about economic development, and then realizing that there's a larger picture than that, and it really kind of evolved into the community development aspect of it, where we can even get into some of the questions that you deal with the planning commission about. You know, if somebody says, we don't want to lose the look of the town. Well, what is that? We want to lose the feel of the town. Well, what is that? And all of the different components of the town, the community, is really what we're looking at, how they all work together.
Any more
Some focus on business, of course.
Any more discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Carries 5-0, Carol. Before we jump into hodgepodge, which I don't know if that was my topic or not, but Camilla, are you here still? I'm sorry. Will you stand up? This is Camilla Mincy. She is a sophomore at Signal Mountain Middle High School, and just having 3 kids that have gone through there and are going there, I know how early you have to get up every day, so well, I wanted to hit this now, so you can go ahead and head out if you wanted to. But Camilla's personal project for the school is to, and I want to bring this up to make sure the information got to the next council, but she came to the Parks Board and made a presentation about how she is going to create, there's been a call, especially through the Parks Board, for biking trails. There's mountain biking, and I think that's a natural fit with our trail system, but there's concern on people who actually hike on those trail system. And so she is going to, through the property here, behind the fields and everything, with the blessing of the town, propose to work with Jarrett and our folks to create is it 2 mile long? Would it end up being 2 mile? Yeah, it'll be about 2 miles when it's done, but mountain bike circuit right in this area. So I thought that's a great project, and I told her that I would bring it up and mention it, so we made sure the next council was aware of it. Thank you. Anything you want to add? You got to come up here and say your name and address, though, because Carol will get mad.
Camilla Mincy, 508 Fern Trail. Yeah, we just really wanted to get like the permission of the town council and like make sure no one was against it or had any issues with it or had any questions. But we just wanted to kind of get the grant and see if we could get it started.
It's a great project, and I've had a ton of people, especially through the park board, have said, you know, can we get our trails? And if that works and not too much of a disruption, I think it's going to be a great project. But I hope the future council takes serious consideration on it.
You're in high school still?
Yes, sir.
What would be a good time for you to meet with the Bike Ped Committee?
Anytime.
Generally, I mean, just an evening.
Do you want it during the day so you can get out of school? That's what he's asking.
Yeah. No, evening probably works, but that's probably what we should do, because it would be good for you to see what's sort of planned with the trails, and so that all that stuff lines up. And they're also,
Well, if you don't mind, the other thing is, during the first meeting after the election certified and the oath is taken, I think it's usually we try to make it a agenda meeting or a work session, right? Is that, okay. And at that meeting, what they'll do, in addition to electing the new mayor and vice mayor, is they'll do board assignments. So where I was the liaison to the park board before, you're going to want to get to know who your new council person is, who's the liaison to the park board, because they should help you hopefully usher that through, or whatever you need. They should be a resource for you too. Sorry, Dan, go ahead.
no, there's a lot of momentum in that direction already, and some of it outside of Signal as well. So I'd like to let you see what some other folks
Great
are looking
project.
into.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
So when should I mean, is there like a scheduled meeting already?
No, we don't have any Bike Ped, because we've got the Bike Ped survey is done. We have none of those scheduled right now.
What I would do is contact Boyd, Mr. Veal, and then he can tell you, if and when somebody gets appointed to the park board, he can kind of be your communication connection to Jared and steer you in the right direction so you can get going on this.
Yeah. What year are you?
I'm a sophomore.
Oh, good. So there's time. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that quick diversion, but I know she has has to get up very early for school. Next on the list is Hodgepodge. Why is this on there? Is it me?
But I did get a communication from the chair of the
Mac.
and she's wasn't able to be here tonight, so she just wanted me to convey that the MAC board is going to be discussing this.
Good.
With an eye towards next fall, and
Great.
so
It is.
something that's being discussed.
It was such a defining event, especially when we first moved up here. It was just so nice to have. So I hope.
And I think that you just hit the nail on the head. That's really what I think the conversation needs to be, that this is a community event, and, it's not to be some huge fundraiser. It's about.
Well, it doesn't mean it doesn't mean it can't, because obviously the more we can raise for the MAC, the better for everybody. All right. Everybody okay on that?
Yep.
All right. Any other discussion on Hodgepodge? Water study. Just for everybody's notification, neither Boyd was not here due to an emergency during our agenda meeting, and our town attorney was not. And any change in the water rate, which was discussed at our last agenda, has to be done through an ordinance. And given that it has to have 2 readings on there, I just asked Boyd basically to get the temperature of the rest of the council and just have that removed at this time. And the next council can handle that going forward. Is that fair? Okay. Anything else on the rate study? Where's Mr. Saputo? All
He's
right.
gone.
He's gone. D, tree removal. Who's this?
The Hickory Killer?
I was informed it needed to be on there, so it's on.
By who?
This was the hickory tree.
Oh, out
The
here?
removal, we said
Okay.
we would let Boyd address it because they had came and talked at the agenda meeting,
And we couldn't really.
and we couldn't respond to it, and we wanted to give you an opportunity to explain.
There was some concern about removal of trees.
Right, I understand that.
Okay. And then there was what I thought was a pretty good, fair article in the Times Free Press today regarding
There's
it.
an article there, and then the community news as well. As it said.
Boyd, is your mic on?
No, it's not, thank you.
Does anybody want water? Okay.
It was kind of a culmination of things we were having some property damage to vehicles, We also had recently had a large claim against our liability carrier for a slip and fall, and just a variety of things that led us to believe that they needed to be removed. The guide that was adopted as part of the ordinance, the guidelines state that you can remove trees that are in conflict with their location, and specifically give the example of a oak with large acorns in a parking lot.
Who created that?
It was adopted by council, and as far as I know, was presented by the tree board. So we didn't think there was anything that needed to be approved. Over the last few years, this area out here, we have made a concerted effort to just make it look better. We've actually had people come in for the sole purpose of saying it looks good. And we are planting some more trees out there. In particular, for about to be past council people and a couple of others. So, you know, we have removed. We had a reason. It wasn't just a random decision, but we are planning to replace some trees out there as well. The plan is to do some red buds and some red maples. So there'll be trees that don't have issues associated with them, and they won't be planted right. You know, one of them was actually coming over the parking lot. The other one was dropping in the road. So again, given what the guidelines were and what the ordinance says, but we were within those guidelines and complied with the ordinance, and we are planning to replace some trees.
Any other discussion on
We
that?
had someone from the tree board, I didn't know if she wanted to comment on it. Okay.
Any other discussion on that? All right. Hearing none, we'll move on to other business. Start temp, Brandon?
No, sir.
Congratulations on making it to your last meeting.
I know, right?
All right, excellent. Thank you for your help.
Mhm.
Very kind of you to step in. Dan? Good, okay. Bob?
Yep, I want to thank you for your service, and I enjoyed working under you. I think you've given great leadership. The state of the town is an excellent reminder about all your work that you put into making this a successful town, and so I want to thank you for your service.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. It was everybody, though. Total team effort. Is that it? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I would like to also echo Dr. Spalding and just thank you for all of the countless hours, Chris, that you have put in over and above. This is a volunteer position. We are not paid, and I am not complaining in one bit. But the amount of hours that you poured into this town with a happy heart, there were so many issues that I think even just my only 2 years so far into my term, that Dan and I kind of got thrown in, sink or swim, and there was controversial issues, and although people landed on one side or the other, I just think you handled it with grace. I think your family went through a whole lot. I think you've been attacked personally, and I appreciate that you were still willing to get to these meetings every time, show up, and do it with a happy heart, and really with the purest motive, having Signal Mountain at the core of every decision you made, even though some of us didn't agree or whatnot. But thank you so much, Chris, for everything you've poured into this town. I have tremendous respect for you, so thank you so much.
Very kind. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. No, it's an honor. It's an honor to serve. I believe everybody should do it at some point in some fashion. And I did my 4 years and very happy that I was able to. Thank you all very much. Boyd?
Just thank you.
Yes, sir. I've worked with a number of you guys on here. And y'all have done a good job as a group of some very difficult issues this time. And I hope you have luck here with another person. I will try to help in that regard, anyone getting on boards to help you out.
Good.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you for your guidance.
And I also, the reason I'm thinking about that other position that I have to do is tomorrow night I will be doing the same thing in Chattanooga.
And congratulations on your promotion. For those who don't know, Phil is leaving us, but only because he is now the head attorney for the city of Chattanooga. Congratulations.
They've added an extra Tuesday night to my list.
Excellent. Thank you all very much. We're adjourned. That's so sweet. You didn't have to do that. Thank you. That was very nice of you. I can talk to anybody now.
One number that I can get.
The water line?
Well, it's been in. Well, I'm really new because Bill's been on the council before, and Dan is, he's been on for a couple of years. So since I'm so new, I would love to get the
Yeah, I know.
just kind of see what y'all do.
I'll get you a copy too of our, well, we'll be doing it new, we do it annually. Just kind of tell us what it's about, like, for myself.